Welcome back. Now, earlier today, we did see the President hail the MPs for ratifying the EPA agreement. Now, what does this mean for Kenya and what opportunities are going to open up for us? Now, in studio, I am joined by the PS of Trade, Alfred Kombudo. Thank you so much. I hope I said your surname right.
Yes, you did. You scored 100 on the first try.
Good. So, I just wanted to first find out from you. We saw it last year, yes. EU Parliament ratify, and then now also the Kenyan Parliament. What is the next step?
The next step after ratification of a trade agreement is simple. Is basically once the two parties have come to an agreement, yes, and both their parliaments have ratified the agreement, we basically take it to be deposited at the World Trade Organization so that it can be recognized as a legal international trade instrument. Yes. I'd like to point out, however, that where we've gotten to has been a journey of close to 20 years. Yes. And therefore, this is a very historic, a very monumental step, one that we believe will provide lots of dividends for Kenyans, but also for East Africans. Yes,
yes. And even as you say, it's going to be historic. Is the ministry now going to take time to perhaps educate Kenyans about what exactly this agreement means and how it's going to benefit them?
Yes, because if we take all the work to negotiate a trade agreement, yes, and then we do not educate, sensitize, work with the private sector, then the results are probably not so much. And perhaps I'd like to state that the Kenya-European Union Economic Partnership Agreement, yes, is a trade agreement that allows Kenya to have permanent access to the European Union market without paying taxes, duty-free, and without a limit as to how much you can export, which is quota-free, into the European Union for everything that we produce. And therefore, we think that it's an area that can provide lots of dividend for us. The European Union is an important market for us. Currently, we export more than 20% of everything, yes, to the European Union. It's a 27-country bloc, and it is worth a GDP of about 13 trillion euros. So it's an extremely important partner to have, and we are proud to have walked this journey over the last 20 or so years and finally secured permanent terms for Kenyan exports into this market.
Yes. And what does this mean then for, or how is it going to trickle down then to, say, the farmer and the SMEs, for someone who's watching you right now? Because a lot of times agreements look like they're high up there, they're just government agreements, they're meant for the bigger businesses and multinationals. But how will it then trickle down to the farmers, to the small and medium enterprises?
Excellent. And that's probably the most important part of this discussion. Yes. If you look at Kenya's relationship with the European Union right now, we are exporting probably about $350 to $400 million worth of flowers. Yes. We are exporting close to $180 million worth of fruits and vegetables, coffee, probably around $150 million, and so on and so forth. What this means is that we now assure that this market will remain permanent over time. We can now start doing more investments into these sectors. We can actually start doing more industrial work in these sectors because industry and investment loves a certain environment. Yes. And before now, we had been operating on a temporary instrument that the European Union had provided that allowed us to access that market, but could be withdrawn anytime. Yes. And therefore, this, I think, is going to be a big trigger for investment and industry. Another thing that I think is quite key here is if you look at the kind of stuff that we're exporting to the EU, even the agricultural commodities, the sugar snaps, some of the vegetables and some of the fruits, avocados, these are things that can be grown by somebody that has a 10 meter by 10 meter small plot somewhere. And smallholders, therefore, are able to benefit from this. People who work in cooperatives are able to benefit from this. And so it's not just for the large players, it's also for the smaller players. And when you look at the ecosystem of exports, you have people who work as transporters.
Yes.
You have people who work as packers in pack houses.
Yes.
You have people who work as scientists that are trying to look at all of these things. There's a whole ecosystem of people that are relying on our $1.2 billion dollars a year
Yes.
export into the European Union. My ambition and the ambition of the ministry is that we now want to embark on a sensitization program, a capacity building program, so that we can double, triple this over the coming years.
And when you talk about capacity building, sometimes, I think even a few years ago, we saw that there was a halt when it came to fish export because of some of these standards, especially in the European countries. Are we going to see also then more training for the farmers to ensure that they do actually get to those standards?
One of the areas that I love most about this agreement is that it is an agreement whereby development cooperation is a very key part of its implementation.
Yes.
So in addition to providing tariff-free, duty-free, quota-free access into the market, we negotiated and are able now to have commitments around development cooperation.
Yes.
And already we can see some of this happening. There are key products like avocado or mangoes and so on and so forth, whereby there are already existing programs where the European Union is working with the State Department and other agencies to improve how these are produced, how the traceability is done, how you ensure that you comply with the measures to get them across the border,
Yes.
and so on and so forth. We are also now cooperating with EU-funded programs run by institutions like Trademark East Africa
Yes.
that are basically also looking at the supply chain so that we are able to export more into Europe and the rest of the world using sea freight instead of just air freight, whereby we have sort of capacity gaps in terms of where our networks go.
Yes.
So we are already seeing a partner, in my view, that is demonstrating that cooperation, capacity building, and support to exercise that market is really part of the deal.
Yes. Let's talk about opportunities, because I'm sure there are people now who are, you've said it's historic, so they're thinking they've never thought about the export market. They're excited about this as you're talking about it. What are some of the opportunities that are really going to open up for this country, and especially when it comes to the sectors? You've mentioned agriculture and manufacturing. Are those the priority areas? What other areas are going to open up, and what are the priority areas?
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for asking that. There are a number of sectors that I believe could benefit from this agreement in addition to the traditional ones. Number one, we export about $1.6 billion worth of tea to the world.
Yes.
Just about $40 million only is currently going into the European Union. We've mostly done this to other parts of the world. So we can understand this market, and we can actually grow our tea exports into this market, particularly if we can do premium packaged tea that basically can attract a premium.
Yes.
Another sector that I think we should be looking at is the leather sector. We have the third largest, maybe second largest herd of animals in the continent. I'm told probably the 12th in the world.
Yes.
And this is a sector whereby we are doing the investments around how we keep animals, how we safeguard the hides and skins, how we collect them and avail them to our local tanneries. We do have tanneries here in Kenya that are supplying markets in Germany, markets in Italy, and markets in the rest of Europe. Using the EU framework, we then should be able to get more investments into the sector, understand the markets better, and work with potential people in industry to basically advance this sector.
Yes.
So the other thing that I think I look at is that an agreement like this is not just supposed to bring benefits to Kenya alone. We also see opportunities for small and medium enterprises in Europe that are interested in investing in Kenya. And this framework gives them the comfort, the certainty that they are coming into an environment whereby they understand how we do customs, they understand how we do trade facilitation, they understand how we manage certain processes with the view that then they can get into the market. Now, what other advantage then does Kenya offer? We are part of the East African community, we are part of COMESA, and therefore I do believe that there are several sectors whereby we could attract investment: petrochemicals, machines, medicines and pharmaceuticals from the European market,
yes,
on the basis of this new friendship.
Yes, and last year I saw when they were voting in the European Parliament, 366 members voted, and they were so excited about it. Why is Europe so excited about the EPA Pact? What is exciting about it? What opportunities are they seeing? Because we also have to make sure that we also understand the opportunities, and there is no imbalance when it comes to trade between Europe and Kenya.
Yes, when I saw the European Parliament voting,
yes,
I think that was probably just about 2 months back.
Yes.
You know, I received a message from Brussels, and it was 366 out of about 500 voting for,
yes,
and a few abstentions and so on and so forth. Kenya is an exciting country, not just to be in,
yes,
but those outside are looking at us in a very interesting way. I think there has been a realization that His Excellency the President has been advocating a strong agenda around responsible manufacturing, around climate finance, around targeting Kenya and the continent as a place whereby we can have a different conversation.
yes,
One around investment, one around green manufacturing, one around whereby we produce sustainably. And you are able to see that we are beginning to attract the attention of the world,
yes,
on this account. If you look at Naivasha, whereby we want to do a lot of ICT related work that requires green energy. If you look at our manufacturing sector, whereby we are beginning to get investments in places like pharmaceuticals, I think Kenya is interesting also because we provide to the world a very strategic access point,
yes,
to the east of the continent.
yes,
We are also strategic because we have rule of law, and they see that this is a place that money can be invested in.
yes,
Investors are shy,
yes,
and they really want a place whereby systems work.
yes,
It is my proposition that Kenya has graduated to be that place in
to
Africa.
be a stable environment.
Yes.
But we are also talking a lot about, and certainly we've seen the President, about the EAC. What does that also mean now for the region?
Excellent question. I invite Kenyans to look at the name of the agreement,
yes,
in full.
Yes.
And that will demonstrate that it is an agreement that has the East African community at its core.
Yeah.
The full text of the agreement is, it's quite a mouthful, the Economic Partnership Agreement,
yes,
between Kenya, a member of the East African community,
yes,
of the one part,
yes,
and the European Union of the other part. What does that mean? It means that although Kenya took the first initial steps,
yes,
to conclude this agreement, we did so with the view that the other East African community countries would be joining this agreement.
yes,
As soon as we concluded the agreement, we convened discussions with the resident ambassadors in Nairobi.
yes,
We've had conversations at the East African Community Council of Ministers, and we already have indications from at least 2 other East African countries that they'd like to join the agreement, and those are formal indications.
Yes.
So we believe that this agreement is one which eventually will be good for the East African community. If you allow me to share maybe 1 or 2
yes,
examples. Usually, if you're going to supply a large market like the EU, you cannot always source everything from one place. And therefore, food products, even if you want to process them,
yes,
Tanzania and Uganda are really good at producing grains and that kind of stuff. So sourcing can be done. We want to be big on things like textile and apparel, where we believe we make very good products into the EU market. Uganda grows very good cotton,
yes,
and so on and so forth. So already I think that's going to be something whereby accumulation around East Africa
yes,
is going to be there and is allowed within the context of this agreement.
Yes.
But most importantly is that we welcome them with open arms. The larger text of this agreement was actually negotiated together. It's only that Kenya took the bold step
yes,
to follow through.
The first,
Correct.
yes. And with the meeting, as you're having a meeting with the other EAC states, what are they saying about it? Are they also looking forward to their agreements? And what do they think about the EPA agreement?
Okay, so every country wants to grow. Every country needs to trade. Every country has an economy that is transforming over time. So what we are seeing is that over time we will have these countries' economies change.
Yes.
Kenya exited being a least developed country some years back.
Yes.
Tanzania is likely to do so fairly soon, and a number of the others are likely to do so as well. The instrument that they're currently using to access the EU market is based on the fact that they are LDCs.
Yes.
And so they really have to also look at the future, and I see that they're very keen to basically join sort of a forward-looking arrangement like the EU, so that then we are able to proceed as a bloc.
Yes, yes. There's a question that has come in. We had asked viewers to send in a question. I was expecting this one from the youth. And there's been this conversation about encouraging the youth to get into the agriculture sector. And there's one person, I suspect he's a youth, Joseph Nyaga, who says, what does this mean for the youth in Kenya?
Yes. It means a lot for the youth. First and foremost, it means a lot for rural youth.
Yes.
Young people who are eking a living, doing different things in a rural setting, many of them are doing agricultural related work. By creating markets, by creating an incentive for cooperatives to form, by creating an incentive to people to process the things that they're making there, we are uplifting the capability of young people to gain from this agreement.
Yes.
But I think even more profoundly is that the agreement provides what we call a rendezvous clause, which means that we are going to negotiate further part of the agreement covering services. Now, this part of the agreement is for the export of goods, which is a huge part of what we do for a living. But young people in this country are getting digital. They are getting the ability to offer services. They want to do artificial intelligence related work.
Yes.
They want to do all these kind of opportunities in terms of content creation. And the EU EPA has a provision for the negotiation of a services chapter,
Yes.
which then will create a lot of access to the European market for the young people. And we really look forward to this.
Yes. To my last question, and you're so passionate about this, how will we measure the success 1 year from now of the EPA agreement? How will we be able to know that, yes, this was a successful agreement?
Yes, you know, if you can't measure something, then it's not going to be done.
Yes.
Let's look at export performance. That's usually a very credible way of checking whether you're doing well. So if we do 5% more, I'll be very happy. If we do 7% more, I'll be very, very happy.
Yes.
So that's one way. Let's look at how exports go. But secondly, let's look at investment. Let's look at whether we are beginning to get more interest. 1 year is a short time for an investment cycle, but we'll be able to see the pipeline. I expect the pipeline to increase. And number 3, a year from now, we also hope to have had very good conversations with the view that I expect to see an uptick in development assistance, not just for trade, but for other sectors of importance for which we are engaging the EU.
Yes. Rose Akama is asking, as a youth, I knew the youth have to ask questions, but as a youth, are there resources that perhaps they can get from government to get more information and also training for them to now take part in this trade?
Yes. So the State Department for Trade is going to, in the next few months, roll out a sensitization program that clearly outlines all the opportunities that are available. And our opportunities are not available just looking at it from a regional agreement, but don't forget these are 27 countries. And each country has different development programs, which then become a priority in the context of us becoming friends in this context. We are also having programs, development programs that we expect to run with the European Union to basically help exporters, help people who want training to understand how to reach the market and all those kind of things, which would be huge consumption areas for young people wanting to exercise trade. So over the next few months, I urge the young people to keep track of this agreement and engage us when we get out there so that we can share specific details.
And as you're engaging, do you expect to see more interest up country than ever before? Because you've been talking more about agriculture. I
do expect to see interest all across Kenya. Also because if you look at some of the sectors that we are keen to engage as part of this agreement, if you look at the leather sector, for example, it starts all the way from our herd of sheep, cows, and other animals. These are all over the country. And sometimes we have animals in what some people perceive to be drier parts of the country that don't get so much action in relation to other crops and that kind of a thing. So there's an equalizing effect if you look at sectors such as the leather sector. So we know that's going to happen. And if you look at, for example, the government's initiative to do data access centers across markets and several other places, we then hope that because of this digital format, even people in other forms of agriculture will be able to comply with EU rules by using technology and by using their phones, and that we hope that access will be all across the country.
Thank you so much. So it means we'll not be able to catch up with you soon. You'll be all over the country educating Kenyans and telling them about the opportunities.
Well, I'll be all over the country educating about opportunities, but you have cameras everywhere, so why don't we go out into the country
catch up with you
and catch up a little bit in Kisii, catch up a little bit in Moyale, catch up a little bit on Mombasa, in Nyeri, in Baringo, and let's see how the EU is going.
I'll take you up on that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, earlier on, we had shared a story on the same, that it was ratified in Parliament today. We have that story and much more for you in business coming up shortly.